initially the thought was, okay, we'll talk about Tennessee facing some NCAA violations. Oh no, but we've got outright war now. That's right, because the state of Tennessee, joined by the state of Virginia, filed a lawsuit against the NCAA. Now, you might remember that. Thank you, producer Jordan, who I'd already told him he's got full message board brain. I mean, he is ready to go into a holy war, a crusade right now for all that is right and just. We know that 10 different states, plus the Department of Justice, plus the District of Columbia, have an ongoing lawsuit against the NCAA, antitrust in nature, over transfer rules. Now this is just straight up against all NIL rules. So, Bud, before we get into the violations, I want to talk about what's sort of like here on our desk this morning on Wednesday. When you see this legal action from the state of Tennessee, from the state of Virginia, how do you see this in terms of the long game? Like, can you place us not necessarily within the text, unless, of course, that's important to you, but what exactly is happening here between Tennessee and the NCAA?
Sure. So Pat Forty reported yesterday for Sports Illustrated that the NCAA was investigating and I guess had some, maybe a forthcoming notice of allegations against the University of Tennessee for NIL related activities. Spire Sports, who we've actually had on the show to explain how a collective works before. And it came out that it's about the Nico Imalieva situation, which was a pretty public reporting done, $8 million allegedly type thing back in like 2022, I believe it was. So
March of 2022, I believe, is what we're circling for that.
So Tennessee is, and I think that they are. It's important to note here that they, I believe, are still on probation for the Jeremy Pruitt stuff that they used to turn in Jeremy Pruitt and fire him for cause to get out of paying his buyout. So they have some real skin in the game here to not get hit with a repeated violator thing, and they are firing back in a pretty substantial way. They are saying, "Hey, what we did was legal now, but it certainly was legal at the time that we engaged in it." The collective did not strike the deal with Nico contingent on him attending any school. They struck it in California under California law, which allows high schoolers to be paid NIL. And basically, NCAA, you can't have your cake, which is we don't want to really put any rules on NIL because we want to delay, kids becoming employees for as long as possible. And hey, let's throw our hands up. We're helpless. Can't have your cake and eat it too, which is enforce ambiguous and ever-changing rules. So Tennessee's like, hey, yeah, we're not going to get punished over stuff that you didn't make any rules for, which was your own fault for not making the rules, although they are sort of one of the member schools. So in some very small way, the fact that we don't have NIL rules is also a result of the schools. And today, the state of Tennessee, joined by the state of Virginia, is suing the NCAA, which I suggested they should do yesterday on Twitter, that eventually somebody's going to say, hey, like, there's a fundamental right to earn a living via NIL, just as there's a right to earn a living in many other ways that are legal. And you, the NCAA, with these rules and trying to enforce them, is engaging in anti-competitive behavior, which is a violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act. Thus, we are suing you in federal court. And if I had to guess here, I'm going to bet that we'll have other states join as well, because that's kind of what happened. That's what happened in the West Virginia case, which is what is currently happening, as Chip mentioned, with the regulation in terms of the number of transfers. Again, can you put non-compete type things on people that in the same filing you're saying are not employees? Probably not, right? So, I mean, throughout the course of human history, people have fought really hard to keep their labor unpaid, right? Like, I mean, the NCAA, that's what the NCAA is doing here. They want to make sure people don't get paid. And they're eventually going to lose. I think the question is when.
Okay, so that's the big picture.
Yeah.
Danny, do you think Tennessee's going about this like the right way? Like, when we get the word that because look, the NCAA does not comment often on ongoing investigations, but boy, we got some leaky faucets where we can get a sense of sort of like what's going on with the NCAA. The NCAA is trying to be tough right now. do you think they've got any good angle here to try to create some problems for Tennessee in a way that would jeopardize Josh Heupel, Nico Iamaleava, or sort of what is a bright future for the Vols football program?
This is kind of similar to what happened when Florida State sued the ACC. Remember what we said? All the other ACC schools should be happy that they're doing the dirty work, right? They're taking the risk, putting their name out there and trying to see what they can do. It's essentially what's happening here with Tennessee and Virginia and the NCAA. They're going to sue and we're going to find out. And I don't think the NCAA has a leg to stand on. Like, my first reaction with some of these, investigations when Florida State came down with some penalties, it's kind of pissed off. Like, why is the NCAA doing this? Why are they trying to legislate this? And then my reaction came, yeah, bring more of them and see what happens, because now you're going to see what happens with them trying to enforce, trying to yield any power that they still have, which is none. Like, I think this is the beginning of the end for the NCAA, which I do think is a good thing. And when I said that yesterday on Twitter, some people were like, well, oh, you're okay with cheating. No, I'm not okay with cheating, because, they're like, don't you want it to be cleaned up? Don't you want everything above board? It's impossible to do it above board when there really are no rules. And going back to the original case, like, these are only guidelines. How is the NCAA enforcing guidelines? Like, I give my daughters guidelines all the time. You think they're going to follow them? No, they're like suggestions. Of course, people are going to toe the line and they're going to push the envelope. And at least we can get out of this sham of a system, because I don't want to just say Tennessee is not guilty of anything. They're doing what everybody is doing, but it's all a sham. Like, everyone knew Nico was going to Tennessee. Everyone threw out the $8 million because it was. Everyone else has been doing it too. But then all of a sudden you're going to come down and try to enforce these rules and not do it to everybody. Let's get all on the same page where we have a system where there's a clear set of rules, or a clear salary cap, or a clear workforce, to Bud's point, where we can actually have some regulation, some continuity, where it's a level playing field where everybody can at least have a chance in this competition.
Is it a level playing field ever?
Not right now.
Yeah.
No. Well,
I don't think it ever will be.
When has it ever been a level playing field? What was it legal for? Was it level for certain schools to hide a bunch of people who didn't know how to bowl or didn't know how to swim on scholarships for those sports, right? To skirt scholarship limits? Some of your very best programs of like the 2010s or 2000s really damn good at just handing out weekly cash payments and keeping it quiet, right? Like, I think this idea of a level playing field is kind of a farce. I also, why is it cheating to compensate the players? Like, we don't call.
Well, no. I'm saying I don't have a problem with what Tennessee did because everybody's doing it, but it's a sham because their defense is, well, there was never an agreement. We all know there was an agreement, right? Like, we're not going to believe this defense, right? It's what they have to say, but we know why players are getting paid money. It is not because you have a following and it's because of your name, image, and likeness. It's because you're a football player and you're coming to play for your school. That's the sham that I want to end. If we're going to pay them, let's pay them to be football players. And let's have agreements in place where you can regulate rosters, where you can have some form of just regulation that allows coaches to manage rosters, that allows you to keep track of who's coming, who's going. And it's not just this complete bleep show that we have going on right now, which no one knows what's going to happen.
So, yeah, I think Tennessee, or Jules' question here, isn't Tennessee biting the hand that feeds it? If Tennessee wins this case, then it just gets players closer to becoming employees, and all these schools just took a massive hit to their bottom lines. As I said at the open, like, Tennessee has real skin in this game. If they just roll over and let the NCAA do the penalties because they're in jeopardy of getting the repeat violator thing due to what happened with the Jeremy Pruitt situation. So they have real impetus to sue here. And I think it's important to note that, like, the school of Tennessee's defense, the University of Tennessee's defense, is likely to be different than what the state's case is. Right.
And that's the thing that's so interesting to me. And this might be more of a April, May, June kind of conversation to really unpack it. But right now you have college football coaches that are screaming for any kind of regulation on what they see as, just all these players being able to do what they want, while you have state attorneys generals and state houses and state governments that are saying restricting any of that movement and any of that ability to make NIL is anti-competitive. So coaches want more regulation, while legislators are actually asking for less. And it's all coming to a head right now in cases like this, and in the case like the West Virginia case, because I was speaking to somebody at a power conference who works in an athletic department, and he was very passionate. He was like, we need antitrust exemption. We need to get an antitrust exemption from the federal government so that we can put in rules so that we can actually, solidify this. And like, one interpretation of that, as I was on the phone with them, was I was like, oh, so you just want to strip all the players of their rights. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to go really well right now in the current environment. But that is the fight that we have, is, are players allowed to choose where they want to go to school? Are players allowed to make money off of their skills and their talents? And there are a lot of people who are like coaches, and I don't want to put this on all coaches because a lot of coaches have been very open-minded about it, but coaches want there to be more restrictions on both of those things, while there is growing sentiment in high positions, state government and the like, that want less of those things. And it's kind of fascinating the way that they're all butting heads right now.
So where you could have some interesting bipartisanship is with this Tennessee lawsuit against the NCAA, because I think you'll have some states that really, really care about winning join in. And I think you'll have some states that really, really care about players' rights, regardless of winning, join in as well. Right. So like maybe you get some northern states who don't even
California and Tennessee start holding hands. And all this.
That's right.
Like,
hey,
the world
with our interests aligned. Yeah. So, and you mentioned cases. I mean, we have the House case out there that is the one that I think everybody who works in athletics administration is watching very closely, because that's your back NIL case, right? That basically, hey, we were owed this, your rules prevented it, and the settlement could be
$3 billion.
Yeah, right. It could be serious settlement money for a lot of these schools. And whenever that goes down, that's probably the one of the key, kind of breakaway points. Do you want to play at this level or do you not, type thing. But yeah, ultimately, if you're the NCAA, you're kind of doing the justify your existence thing. So and a lot of their member schools probably do want them to do something, but a lot of those member schools probably don't try to compete at the championship level in revenue sports. So, yeah.
A lot of states that are always complaining about big government suddenly want the government to get involved in their football teams. It's kind of interesting to see what brings them out. A bunch of socialists down in the SEC who want the government.
But they want the legislation to be done by the bench, not by laws. Look at that.
But here's why I don't want to make it sound like I want government to win. I want people to wake up that are in charge, realize what's at risk, and separate. That's what I want to happen, is to say, you know what, enough of this, enough handing it over to politicians, enough having this fought in court. We're wasting money. Let's separate. We've talked about it. When football can become its own sport, its own entity, when you can regulate itself, have a commissioner, have a union. Like, it already feels like the minor league NFL. Let's just make it minor league NFL, and we can get to that place. Like Tripp in the comment section, he put, it's just an inefficient market. It was back up there a while ago. Everybody's freaking out about NIL because it's just an inefficient
private equity
market.
Wants in.
Right. But what I'm saying is that the NIL isn't the finished market. The whole thing is inefficient. The whole thing is broken. It's not inefficient. It's broken, because NIL, in the truest sense of the word, isn't even what we're talking about. Let's get it above board where we know what players are being paid, what type of contracts are they signing, so that you can have more continuity and you can have, again, like roster semblance, and you could have a salary cap. Like, let's get to that point, because I think we're going to get there in 10, 15 years eventually. This lawsuit, I hope gets us there sooner. Do you think that's more or less likely to make that happen? This lawsuit?
I think it is considerably likely that
right.
It speeds up the timetable.
What's that timetable look like?
6 months. No,
maybe 3-4 years.
Yeah, at least.
I've got
Nothing in courts ever moves quick.
Right. And,
Doesn't benefit the lawyers if it does.
But as opposed to waiting for the courts to figure it out, it's hard to just separate and say, let's go this year. You have to figure a lot more out. But
yeah, because you would then need to create another thing, another entity where, Danny, I'm with you. You would be employees, and you would have contracts, and you would have a union, and you would collectively bargain all the different pieces that could be. And there are, a lot of people like the Pac-12 case right now, USC, UCLA, National Labor Relations Board, that's going to pick up, I think, maybe this week, if not here in the next couple of weeks, in terms of moving that on down the line. There are individuals who have been imagining, what it could look like where you have collective bargaining in college football and in revenue sports. So I would hope that whenever you get all the paperwork figured out, I would hope that there's a structure that could be proposed, because yes, that is the future. I mean, and Bud, help me out on this. If you have union representation, collectively bargained payment, contracts, all those things, we don't need to worry about antitrust exemptions at that point, correct?
Yeah, that actually is pretty likely that you would not need it. Yeah, I'm trying to think here. Yeah, I think you have that right, Jeff.
All right, so Cody, you are hitting a good one here. Based on this conversation, I think it's clear billable hours should be ranked number 1 in the preseason AP poll.
that's great.
It's the off season, baby. That's it seems, whether you're suing a conference or suing the NCAA, that's that seems to be the lawyers are the ones that are picking up the big off season wins year in and year out.
That is true. Tennessee's fight song does have that. One other thing is we use the phrase the end of the NCAA, but I don't think that's necessarily accurate.
Okay.
The NCAA is currently constituted.
Right. They can do what they were originally created to do, was run college athletics.
Correct. Yeah,
but put on championships, which they don't run football's championship. I think it's the only sport they don't run, right?
They're very good at doing what their purpose is, which is to keep all the money away from the athletes at any cost, to keep it all for themselves. That's the main purpose. That's why they formed it. That's why they came up with the term student athletes. And number 2, to administer your championships for postseason for non-football. That's their 2 of their main things. And then some administrative duties, obviously.
So Tennessee, again, facing an investigation into violation of NIL guidelines from the NCAA. No notice of allegations yet. No knowledge in terms of the specifics of what they would be charged with, who all would be involved. But the state of Tennessee already responding with a lawsuit against the NCAA. Big winners here, billable hours.